Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn, so let's try and understand why. Jupiter rules our faith, and it is this faith that directs and manifests the good things in our life. Now, Capricorn, on the other hand, is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn thinks that hard work is what gives results, right? Nothing else does. Jupiter is optimistic, a believer, and he dreams big. But Saturn is strictly focused on his work, and he might actually tell Jupiter that, look, you can, dream as much as you want, but right now you have practical concerns, you have your family to feed, and so you better work hard so that one day you can actually pay off your mortgage. Now, Jupiter believes in the higher powers of the universe, and that the universe reciprocates with our deeds, but Saturn is definitely not gonna buy into this, right? Saturn is very practical and down to earth, and he would kind of even, challenge Jupiter. Where's your proof? Where's the guarantee that there's really someone up there in the clouds, who is going to help you? Have you ever seen any of them? And so he would advise, Jupiter in Capricorn, look, you gotta get real about life. And you gotta work hard and establish yourself because you are the one in control. Now, Jupiter is inquisitive, right? He wants to understand why they're suffering, and he's looking for the deeper meaning of life. But Saturn certainly isn't interested in that, and he might just say, hey, look, you only got one life, and you better make the most out of it. So, work hard, and one day, all your efforts are gonna pay off. So this is what happens when you put Jupiter in Capricorn, right? It's like when you tell a philosopher to run a business, and that the only thing that matters are practical concerns, and you should just forget about all those deeper aspects of life. Right? In Capricorn, Jupiter becomes very pragmatic, very realistic, and even actually pessimistic, because his ideals and his deeper aspirations for life just get replaced by the desires for money and status. And so just imagine, this philosopher or spiritual teacher now all of a sudden is forced to, run a business instead of, leading and uplifting, his community, right? So he's only now concerned with profit, with deadlines, with tangible results. And this is really Jupiter's struggle in Capricorn. Yes, he has knowledge and he has wisdom, but now that is getting exclusively channeled into material matters. And so what is the solution? Well, Jupiter in Capricorn needs to learn that he's not the only one who is in control, right? He needs to make room for cultivating his intuition and allowing a higher energy to benefit his life, right? Growth does not only come from hard work, but also trusting in a higher benevolent power. Jupiter in Capricorn needs to cultivate the belief that growth doesn't have to be hard and painful, but it can also happen through one's good fate. And so Jupiter in Capricorn can achieve balance by combining its deep understanding and higher knowledge with the real world, because then he can be practical and successful, but also deeply insightful and spiritually progressive. Venus is debilitated in Virgo, so let's find out why. We all know that Venus rules romantic relationships, but in Virgo, Venus struggles to express love in relationships freely and authentically. Why is that? Because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and when Venus is in Virgo, it becomes overly focused on material security at the expense of a genuine emotional connection. Venus loves to be in Pisces because this is where it can actually cultivate a genuine emotional loving connection. But when Venus is in Virgo, then it becomes overly focused on practical matters. Venus in Virgo can be compared to the romantic poet that suddenly turned into an accountant. Okay. You meet someone with Venus in Virgo and you thought, wow, you're so romantic. You really thought about all those little details. But then on the same date, they take out their notebook, and because they need to make sure that all the numbers are in order too, because financial concerns are very important for Venus in Virgo, right? And they need to make sure that their newfound love really meets their criteria as well. And so for Venus in Virgo, love here can really be equated to material security, right? And how people feel becomes less important. What this means is that over time, Virgo's tendency to equate love with material security and to analyze love on the basis of their material criteria can turn the romantic relationship into a never-ending endeavor to try and improve their partner, to get more out of them, to fix them up. Instead of basically embracing love for what it is and experiencing love authentically with a genuine emotional connection, love seems to be absent and the relationship is never good enough and there's always something wrong with the other person. What is the solution for Venus in Virgo? Well, it needs to learn that practicality and love can coexist. Right? They are not mutually exclusive. Venus in Virgo knows perfectly well how to do all the duties that are part of a committed relationship, but they fail to understand that the emotional connection is just equally important. And so essentially they need to learn how to love. And love can only exist when imperfections are seen as real and normal, right? Not everything can be fixed in this world. And so love can only be real when the partner is accepted with all its pros and cons. And when they can do that, that's when Venus in Virgo can be balanced. And they can then understand that the joy of being in love is just as important as managing everyday practical concerns together. When a planet is debilitated, then it is placed in an environment that obstructs its natural way of operation, and then it becomes dysfunctional. So let's see what happens when Saturn is in Aries. What are the qualities of Saturn and how are Aries' qualities opposite? Saturn by its very nature wants to move slowly and carefully, but Aries likes to, rush into something. It wants to be the first in something. It doesn't need a long-term plan, right? Aries doesn't really think so far ahead. It just likes the excitement of initiating something, of taking risk and making something happen right now. Whereas Saturn really appreciates building up success over the long haul. Saturn knows that everything that's, all the great things take time, and so it doesn't mind patiently waiting. And so that's why Saturn in Aries feels, out of place. It is forced to act in this fast-paced environment where its usual method of careful, long-term planning doesn't work anymore. Right? It is pushed to come up with immediate results and solutions and gets frustrated when things don't happen quick enough. So Saturn in Aries feels that, whatever it does, there's a huge challenge. And it gets quickly impatient and then ends up making reckless decisions that cause huge setbacks. So what is the solution for Saturn in Aries? Well, Saturn needs to develop its qualities to balance out Aries, right? Not everything has to happen immediately, right? Instead of rushing into making decisions, Saturn needs to learn to take its time, to plan carefully, and to develop an actual strategy. Yes, it is still okay to take risks, but those risks, they need to be evaluated properly before taking action. Discipline can feel really restrictive for Aries, and so Saturn here needs to learn that some level of discipline is necessary for success. And therefore, ultimately, Saturn in Aries needs to balance its initiative and bold action with structure and discipline.